Hello and welcome back to the channel, folks. I am your host, Vortex from MobileMusicPro.com, your home for mobile music production. And if you are new to the channel, what we do here is we try to help and create more mobile music producers. We are currently training over 2,000 producers with the goal of training over 1 million producers worldwide. So if you do want to help us out with our mission, make sure to like, subscribe, and share out the show. Now in today's video, we're going to be giving you our top 5 picks for the best AUv3 sequencer apps. And just like our previous top list videos, we're not ranking these apps in any specific order. If any of these apps ever make any of our top list videos, you can rest assured they're all number 1 in our book. This list was actually pretty tough to narrow down compared to our normal lists, because there's just so many sequencer apps out there. Now there is quite a bit of things here to consider and take into account when you are trying to rank these apps, but really the biggest 3 for us is pretty much always usability, stability, and price. Now there may be some of you out there thinking or asking the question, why do I even need an AUv3 sequencer app if my DAW already comes with one built in? Well, as it turns out, there actually is quite a number of use cases for these apps. And one of the biggest use cases of those being that if you're not actually working with a DAW to record your music. There are people out there just using hardware or hardware mixers, or in the case of the iPad, using something like AUM or AudioBus as their music production workflow. And in some cases, some people just straight up prefer these apps over their DAW's native sequencer. There are features found in these apps, for example, that don't exist in Cubasis's native sequencer. So we're always happy to try out these new apps and see what we can find. So without further ado, let's get right into exploring our top 5 picks for the best AUv3 sequencer apps. Hello everybody, we are wishing you the happiest of the happiest from wherever you are in the world, and as you can see, we are going a little bit old school today due to some technical difficulties. For some reason, I can't seem to get both the webcam and the HDMI stream from the iPad displaying inside OBS at the same time. It seems to be only one or the other, so I will be doing some further tests. Obviously, it was working perfectly fine when we recorded the previous videos and when we recorded the very first live stream just a few days ago. Alright, now our usual disclaimer will apply here, guys, because we are not going to get too crazy in depth with these apps for the sake of time to keep this video short. But we will be showing you the features that we find most compelling, and almost all of the apps today will actually be loaded up inside Cubasis 3 as AUv3 midiFX apps, with only one exception which we'll get into here shortly. So if you do enjoy this video, make sure to check out our recent video called How to Use AUv3 Effects Apps Inside Cubasis 3, and our songwriting shortcut series of videos. Alright, now with that aside, let's get into these apps. And the first app we'll be taking a look at today is Octachron by Numerical Audio, currently available for $4.99. Octachron is a flexible 8-track MIDI sequencer supporting up to 32 steps and custom time signatures with rich modulation and sequencing capabilities. It is optimized for drums, but is also great for experimental melody lines. And as you can see, folks, we do have the app pulled up here right inside Cubasis 3 as a MIDI effects app. Now let's go ahead and make this just a little bit bigger so you guys can see better. There we go. Now, as the description says, the UI is definitely tuned more towards drums. And that's what we have set up right here with one of Cubasis's built-in kits, House Kit 2. And we just entered a quick little pattern in here just to play around. So let's hear what that sounds like real quick. Alright, just a quick and simple little pattern there. Now let's explore around the UI a little bit. To the far left-hand side is where you will find all your individual drum sounds, from the kick, snare, and clap, all the way down to the closed and open hi-hats. And then taking up the majority of the screen is the actual sequencer itself, where you can easily enter in your notes just by tapping. And above the main sequencer, you'll find your patterns. This is where you can store, save, and recall your different drum patterns. We're only using the first slot right now, but if we were to tap on the second slot, you can see that it is completely blank and ready to begin accepting notes. And you can have a total of up to 8 patterns at any given time. Now let's return to our first pattern by tapping on that. There we go. You can easily copy and paste patterns by either long tapping on the pattern itself, or by holding down the shift mode and then tapping your pattern. This will reveal a secondary menu where you can either copy, paste, or clear your pattern. So let's copy this real quick, and then long tap on the second pattern slot next to our first one, and paste. And now we have that first pattern copied over exactly to the second pattern slot. And you can always switch back and forth between them by tapping on either pattern. And the final bit of visible user interface before you have to begin exposing more options with menus is the velocity section at the very bottom. The velocity is of course pretty self-explanatory, allowing you to adjust the volume for each individual note. So a very clean and minimal UI focused on getting your patterns entered in as fast as possible. And now let's dig into some additional settings. So to expose those, we'll tap on the settings button in the top left-hand corner, which will bring up your sequencer settings. And here you can set your number of steps, your clock division, and your swing. By default, you'll see that the swing is 50 and the number of steps is 16. So we can quickly change those at any time. We'll change it to 24. And you'll notice it update in the background. We can click X to show you that. And here you can see the additional steps added. So let's go back to the menu and switch this back to 16. And for now, we'll leave our swing at 50% and close out of that menu. And of course, you can always save and load your patterns. To do that, we tap on the Octachron logo on the top left-hand corner, and that will reveal your presets and MIDI mapping menu. You can load your presets by tapping on Load, and then we tap our arrow to go back. And you can save the settings of your current preset by tapping on Save, or you can save this as a new preset by tapping on Save As. You can also change your MIDI mapping at any time and save those presets as well, and you can recall those by tapping on Load. And there are already a few built in here by default. We have Ruizmaker and Ruizmaker FM, MVO8, DM2, DM1, and Axon. By default, it's set to General MIDI though. So we'll tap our arrow to go back, and then tap the X to close out of this menu. And one other cool thing is by holding down the Shift button, you can see the exact MIDI note that's mapped to each instrument. You can see that our kick is mapped to C36. And once again, you can modify that MIDI mapping at any time by tapping on the logo in the top left-hand corner, and scrolling down and tapping on Customize. Here you can see each individual instrument and which MIDI it's mapped to. And to change it, all you have to do is tap on it. Enter in your new note, and you're good to go. And remember, you can always save and recall those MIDI mapping preferences as well. But really, the default mapping works really well when using it with all of the built-in Cubasis 3 drum kits. We didn't actually make any modifications here, and it recognized the kick and the snare just fine, as well as the open and closed hi-hats. And that's pretty much it for the quick walkthrough of Octachron, a very simple but powerful app with a hyper focus on usability, so you really can start getting creative as soon as possible. So yet another fantastic app from Numerical Audio. The next app on our top 5 sequencer video today is Atom by AUv3, currently available for $8.99. Atom is a piano roll sequencer for iOS, and the first in the Atom series of modular sequencer plugins. You can record, replay, loop, and manipulate MIDI notes anywhere. Atom supports dynamic stretching, advanced time signatures, non-destructive quantize, and more. And like the description says, you can use this inside of AUM or AudioBus or any host that supports AUv3. As you can see here, we of course have it pulled up in our DAW of choice, Cubasis 3. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger so you can see. It looks pretty great small, but actually let's go ahead and full screen this. So as piano rolls go, this is a pretty comparable addition. Now Cubasis's native piano roll is okay, but this app does have some features that Cubasis doesn't. And one of those main features that I've been really hoping can come inside of Cubasis 3 at some point is ghost notes. And we'll show you what we mean by that in just a minute. But first, let's take a look around the UI. Of course, we have the main piano roll dominating the main part of the UI. And it's always a nice bonus having the name of the notes on the keyboards. This really helps newcomers get started. To begin drawing in your notes, you simply tap the pencil at the bottom left-hand corner. And now we can begin drawing in our notes. We'll draw in B and E there real quick, and let's hear what that sounds like. Okay, perfect. We are using a built-in piano preset in Cubasis's Microsonic. Now, above the main piano roll is where most of the settings live. In the top left-hand corner, we have the time signature, the tempo multiplier, global beat, and loop beat. To adjust any of these settings, we simply tap on them. So we can change from a 4/4 time signature at any time. For example, we can change to a 5 and 2. But we'll leave it for now at the default 4/4. And then to hide that time signature menu, we tap on the time signature once again. Now there is a playhead here in the top right hand corner, but you really won't be using it that much when you're using the app as an AUv3 plugin inside of a host. And then of course we can change the size of our grid and notes by tapping on the grid options in the top right hand corner. By default it is set to 116, but as you can see you can change that at any time by tapping on it. So we'll leave this at 16th notes for now. And then of course you have your standard cut, copy, paste, and delete options that are in any MIDI editor. Your delete is at the bottom right hand corner, and your cut is at the bottom left hand corner, with the selection tool being just above the cut tool. So yet again, a pretty intuitive UI, especially if you're used to using piano rolls and MIDI editors in the past. But I do want to show you guys this ghost notes feature real quick. So let's do that now. So first let's make this small, and scroll up a bit, and make sure we're selecting the right track. So here we have our Atom track with the Atom app inserted into our MIDI effects tab. Now within this instance of Atom, you can see we have two notes at the bottom left hand corner here. And now what we're going to do is create a second instance of Atom on another MIDI track. So we'll tap our second MIDI track here called Atom 2, and let's go under the MIDI effects tab on the left hand side and tap to add effect. We'll add another instance of the Atom piano roll, close our list browser, and now in the top right hand corner you'll notice a layers button. If we tap on this layers button, you can see that all of our instances of Atom will show up here. Currently we do just have these two instances. Since our current instance is green, indicated by the green color here in the top left hand corner, let's activate the first instance over here, which is blue. And now let's expand this real quick. And here you can see the ghost notes of our first instance of Atom. This comes in really handy for knowing exactly which notes and chords that you use, so that you can make sure that you're always in key with your bass lines and your top line melodies. So for example, now that we know that this is B, we can draw right over that. We'll tap the draw icon in the bottom left hand corner and begin drawing over that ghost note. Let's draw over the whole note. There we go. And now we have our green B note in our second instance of Atom. And now let's make this small and return to our first instance of Atom. We'll tap on the Atom 1 track and bring up the Atom app. Let's expand this once again. And now let's reveal the ghost notes of the second instance of Atom by again tapping on our layers button in the top right hand corner and enabling our second instance. Now here it actually won't reveal that ghost note because we did draw our ghost note over the exact same note as our first instance. So let's quickly move that note now. We'll go back to our second instance of Atom. And let's move this note down a couple so that we can see it in our first instance of Atom. Now let's go back. Click on the E to bring up our first instance once more, and let's expand this. Now this ghost note may not update right away until you disable and re-enable the instance. Now that we've done that, you can see that our ghost note from our second instance of Atom is revealed right here, which is this A note that is slightly grayed out in the green color. So again, this ends up being really handy for making sure that your bass lines and melodies and everything that you do is in that same key. This feature is supported in pretty much every desktop DAW, but we are still waiting for it to hit the mobile DAWs in the iOS ecosystem. And the next app on our top 5 AUv3 sequencer video today is midiSTEPs by Arthur Kearns, available for $9.99. midiSTEPs is a powerful and fun AUv3 step sequencer. It was designed to be super easy to use in a way that's similar to the SH-101 sequencer, where you can just quickly enter a few keyboard notes and you're ready to hit play and hear your sequence. And we do have the app pulled up here inside Cubasis. Let's make this a little bit bigger again. There we go. Now personally, I've never used an SH-101, but if it is anything like using this app, I'm sure it was a joy to use. Like the description says, all you do is hit some notes and then hit play. Now before we go over the UI, it's probably important to note that this app is mostly used for arpeggios and melody sequences. But since it is just MIDI that it is step sequencing, you can of course use it for drums as well. And that's what we've set up in our example here. So currently we have this set up as a MIDI AUv3 effect app that will be affecting a built-in drum kit inside of Cubasis called Rock Kit. So let's hear this now and see this app in action. So obviously a very simple pattern there, but you can get, of course, increasingly complex, especially with the ability to add rest notes by tapping on the rest button in the bottom right hand corner. Now before we switch this out from drums to a piano, let's go over the UI a little bit. Like most sequencers, we will have the ability to enter in multiple patterns, and we can find our pattern browser over here in the top right hand corner. Currently we are just on the first pattern, but if we were to tap on pattern 2, you can see that it is blank and ready to begin inputting notes. So we'll go back to the first pattern here. To clear out the very last note entered, you tap the clear button. If you'd like to affect a specific note, you long tap over that note. So we'll long tap over C1. And this reveals additional options. Here we can clear this specific note or copy and paste this to a different section. Let's tap the clear button now. And that first note is now gone. And we can always copy this note and replace another note by selecting that note and hitting paste. To clear out of this secondary options menu, simply tap the edit button. Before we check out the additional settings, let's clear out these notes and select a different instrument. So we'll scroll up here and change from the drums to a piano. Let's find a piano. There we go, let's use bright piano. And now we can close out of the microsonic and go back to our midiSTEP app. Now, as we mentioned in the description, to begin creating a pattern, all you have to do is begin typing in notes. So you could type in a single note on the keyboard, or you could type a chord. And it will record those notes as steps in the sequencer. So we can play those two back that we just created. And you can see that it recorded them perfectly. So let's clear these now real quick and try to create a quick progression. Alright, that progression has been recorded in. Let's see what it sounds like. Now obviously that's pretty fast, so let's check out our options menu. We'll tap on options on the left hand side, and here we can see our clock and swing settings. So let's select half notes and hear what this sounds like. Okay, perfect. Now there is some additional settings in the More section, but you probably won't be using that too much. You'll probably most likely be using the Notes section on the far left hand side, where you can adjust the length, velocity, and accent. So let's adjust the length of those chords. There we go, starting to sound much better. We can even slow that down once more by clicking on the clock, and let's choose 1 this time. Okay, perfect. And that's how easy it is to enter a sequence into this app. To close out of the additional settings, we just tap anywhere outside of it. Now, like the previous apps, you can also copy and paste entire patterns. To do that, we tap on our Tools menu on the left-hand side, and we'll tap on Copy Pattern, and we'll select pattern number 2, and tap Tools once again, and then tap Paste. And now when we close out of our menu, we should have the exact same pattern ready to go. And there we go, now that pattern has been exactly copied over. So at the end of the day, this is a pretty unique sequencer, allowing you to directly type in notes for each step. So all in all, a very fun and very useful app. The next app we have on our list is StepPolyArp by Laurent Colson, available for $14.99. Now, StepPolyArp is a real-time polyphonic and polyrhythmic MIDI-step arpeggiator and step sequencer, which basically means it can create both arpeggios and sequences. Many people write this off as just another arpeggio app, but it really is so much more powerful than that. So let's take a look at this. We have the app pulled up here now inside of Cubasis 3. Let's make this a little bit bigger again, so we can see more of the user interface. There we go. Now by default, the app is in arpeggio mode, so if you do just start holding down notes, you can hear that it is arpeggiating all of those notes. Now you'll notice a mode section on the bottom of the app here, where it says ARP and sequence. By default it is in this ARP mode, but we can always change it into the sequencer mode by tapping on sequencer. Now once we do this, the notes will automatically play, just like any other MIDI editor or piano roll, once we hit play on our host app. In this case, of course, being Cubasis. So if we switch back to ARP, and then hit play, you'll hear nothing will happen until we do switch into sequencer mode. Now, like we said, it will play all of the notes that we see in the sequence. So before we do explore the UI a little bit, let's clear out this pattern. To do that, we'll tap our gear icon in the top right hand corner. And where it says fill, we're going to tap on blank. But there are a couple real handy fill options in here, such as every 2 steps or every 4 steps. Even all steps works pretty well. But we'll leave this blank for now, and then close out of this menu. Now let's make this full screen so we can see a little bit better. Now right away at the top left hand corner we will have our presets menu. And there's actually quite a few factory presets to choose from. There's a bunch of cool ones in here like Air 80s, Alone, BassArp, and more. In fact, if we just start scrolling down here, you can see there's a bunch. And you can even browse by category by tapping on the Category tab. Now you can see whether it's a sequence or a lead or a chord, so just a whole variety of different pattern options in here for different instruments. And of course you can always create your own user presets that will live in the user presets section. Alright, let's close out of that now. And what I like a lot about this app is that there's no draw icon or select icon. You're just like always in draw mode at any given time, so you can just start drawing in your notes. Like we've done here. We'll draw a couple more. Now, right now our sequencer grid is set to 16th notes, but you can change that at any time by tapping on the top left hand corner where it says speed. And here we can change this to 16th notes, 8th notes, and all the standard different sizes. So we'll leave this at 16 for now, and close out of that. To remove one of your notes, all you have to do is double tap on it, and then you can begin drawing in your next note. And now we have our 2 chords drawn here. Let's hear what this sounds like. To reveal additional options for each note, you just tap on the note once, and then we have this menu pop up. And you can do a couple of cool modifications in here, such as note repeat, acceleration, and velocity curve. I find the note repeat particularly handy, especially when drawing in things like hats. So for example, we can set the note divided by 1, and you'll immediately notice the UI update our note. So let's see what that sounds like. Okay, very cool. We'll set this back to no note repeat, and then close out of this menu. Now there just is a whole bunch of other cool options that we just don't have time to go into today, such as the modulation, the panning, the volume, aftertouch, and pitch bend. All of these really cool additional options that you can modify just by drawing them in. This app really does have a lot of extensive features, but the final 2 that I'll mention here is just the ability to change your scale here at the bottom of the screen. There's just a ton of scales here to choose from at any given time. And then finally you have your groove or swing here at the top of the screen. So that's pretty much an overview of the main features if you are using this app as a sequencer. A seriously huge amount of features packed into a very, very usable app. And the final app that we'll be discussing today is Digikeys by 4Pockets, available for $7.99. Digikeys is a pattern-based sequencer which can be used to drive either external MIDI-based instruments or the internal sample-based audio engine. And there really is a huge amount of samples in here, folks. Now, just like before, we do have the app pulled up here inside of Cubasis. And what I really love about 4Pockets apps is that all of their user interfaces are super adaptive to every size. So as you can see here, by default in its smallest size, it's still very, very usable. We can just scroll through the different screens like this. We'll scroll back to the top here. But then if we were to make it just a little bit bigger, you can see that it scales very well. And then finally we can make it full screen. And now we have multiple panels visible at the same time, including our first main panel here, which consists of the effects, tempo, and graphic EQ, and our second screen, which is our mixer, where we can adjust the volume of each individual sound. Now this by far, folks, is the most extensive app that we are featuring today. As is the case with most 4Pockets apps, they just pack in so many features, from samples to mixers to effects and more. So let's make this medium size again so that we can focus on just one screen at a time. Now on the left hand side we have our effects here, including the delay, reverb, and chorus. To the right of that we have our tempo and sync, and then to the right of that we have our graphic equalizer. Now from this app, you can create simple sequences, and then put those sequences into patterns, and then put those patterns into full songs, all from within this Digikeys app. Now personally, I like to record out the MIDI patterns that I create from within this app, so that I can have that information stored as MIDI regions within Cubasis. And we'll show you how to record that out in just a second. Let's go over the second screen here. We'll scroll up. Here you'll find the mixer, which is pretty self-explanatory, allowing you to change the volume of each individual sound. And if we scroll up one more time, we'll get our actual sequencer. Now the sequencer itself is actually 2 screens large, so to get to the bottom of the sequencer, we have to scroll one more time. And then the final screen just below the sequencer is the song screen. This is where you can sequence all of your individual patterns together to form a song. But this section is out of scope for today's video, so we'll scroll back up. And let's scroll back up one more time. Now in this preset section, you'll notice that there is just a huge amount of samples to choose from. You can see just in our drums section, we have classic electronic kit, EDM, house, industrial, modern 80s, and more. But beyond just drum presets, we also have a bunch of instrument presets, such as brass, strings, guitar, and more. And these samples are good too. I highly recommend everybody check them out. But for now, we'll just stick with our drum samples. So let's close out of the preset browser. To the left of that, you can change your key and your scale, and then to the right of that, we have our transport controls. Now you can actually play your patterns all within the app. You don't actually have to worry about the transport controls in your host app if you don't want to. And you can have everything just play within Digikeys. But since we do want to record our pattern into Cubasis, let's tap the FX out button to the left of the transport controls. Now here, we're going to tap a very important MIDI out button. This will ensure that any MIDI patterns that Digikeys plays will get outputted to Cubasis. So we'll close that now. Now let's scroll just to the bottom of the sequencer here and tap in a quick pattern. Get some hi-hats in here. So we have our hi-hats, snare, and bass drum. Now if we want to play this pattern, once again we can play it within just the app here inside of Digikeys, or we can use the transport controls of our host app, in this case Cubasis. Now personally, I do prefer to use the transport controls inside of Cubasis. But before we can do that, we have to set the option to do so. So let's scroll up to the very first screen. And in the tempo and sync section, we're going to tap on host sync. Again, this will make sure that when we tap on play in Cubasis, it will play within Digikeys. Otherwise, the only way to play back our pattern will be within Digikeys itself, using the transport controls above the sequencer. So let's scroll down one more time to see our pattern again. And now let's play. Okay, perfect. Now, once again, like the previous apps, there are just so many different features in here that we won't be able to cover today. So either make sure that you do check out some full review videos of these apps, or you just download them and see how amazing they are for yourself. Alright, hello and welcome back everybody. We just wanted to thank you again so much for watching the video this far. And thanks again to everybody for watching our premieres live every Wednesday and Saturday morning. And a very special thanks goes out to everybody who attended our very first live stream last Wednesday. I gotta say fam, I really did have such a great time interacting with everybody right there in real time. The chat was just like completely lit up the entire time, so I'm pretty sure everybody had a pretty good time. I mean, the energy was really there. You could feel everybody having a great time, so I'm just super stoked and looking forward to doing our very next live stream next Wednesday. So if you missed the last one, no problem guys, we will be having them every Wednesday. Now the video that you're watching right now should be airing on Saturday morning. So that means by now all the winners for our giveaway during the live stream should have been notified. Again, we did only have 6 codes, so there should have only have been 6 winners. So thanks again guys so much for hanging out with us, and if you are enjoying this content, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. We really absolutely appreciate everybody who shares out the show on their socials. And just a final thought here guys, real quick. Some of you out there might be thinking that this channel is just a hobby channel like so many other channels out there. But this is not a hobby folks, this is a movement. I plan on being here for at least the next 10 years so that we can bring mobile music production to the mainstream and get as many people producing music as possible. So I really do absolutely appreciate everybody out there who is helping us to fulfill that mission. And so until next time everybody, keep talking music and we'll see you later. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be giving you art. So if you do want to help us out with our... So if you do want to help us out on our mission, and just like usual, the English language...